September 1999 began like any other month for the Deshawn family, full of plans for the future and the everyday moments that make up life. But all that came to an abrupt halt when Jessica vanished from her own driveway, her car left behind with the keys still in the ignition. The initial search for her went all wrong with messed up reports, bungled evidence, and false accusations that turned her disappearance into a 15-year-old unsolved mystery. When the answers finally came, they brought more questions than anyone was ready for. It's been said that an average person walks by at least 11 to 36 potential murderers in their lifetime. It's a terrifying statistic that makes you wonder. Would you recognize a killer if you saw one? Could you ever tell if the person returning your smile at the coffee shop or passing you the salt across a dinner table had evil intentions? Every day, we live alongside these numbers in blissful ignorance, not wanting to imagine the worst among us. For the Deshawn family and the small town of Kentucky, that worst became their reality. In the quiet town of Shepherdsville, Kentucky, a 17-year-old high school student vanished from her parents' home. As time passed, the days became weeks, and weeks turned into months. Hope started to fade. Everyone was asking, what happened to Jessica Deshawn? Jessica Dawn Deshawn was born on May 2nd, 1982, right in the heart of the small American town of Shepherdsville, Kentucky, a small farming town located 20 miles from Louisville. She shared a close bond with her family, which included her parents, Mike Deshawn and Edna Jett, and her two younger brothers, Christopher and Michael Jr. From a young age, Jessica Deshawn assisted her parents in looking after her siblings while they were at work. This early responsibility helped shape her into an independent individual, someone her parents could consistently count on. At the age of 15, she secured a part-time position at a nearby fast food restaurant called Hardee's with her best friend, driven by the goal of saving up for her first car. Her dream was to own a red Pontiac. After a few years of diligent saving, she turned that dream into reality. Despite balancing her part-time job, Jessica excelled academically, earning excellent grades. Her achievements fueled her ambitions. She began making plans to pursue higher education with the aim of becoming an accountant. Jessica was excited about her senior year, believing it would be fantastic. The only thing between her and her dreams was one more year of high school. After that, she'd be as free as a butterfly, a creature she was passionate about. In fact, she even had a butterfly tattoo on one of her hips. Overall, life was looking really good for Jessica. She had a new school year ahead, a new car, and even a new boyfriend. Jessica was described as shy and polite, but when she was with her friends, a different side of her emerged. Her sense of humor was outstanding, and she had a talent for making her friends laugh so hard that drinks would sometimes come out of their noses. Living on farmland might give the impression of solitude on vast acres, but Jessica and her family were far from alone. They were surrounded by a close-knit community of friends and relatives. Jessica's dad, Mike, came from a big family with 6 siblings, and her mom, Edna, had 5 siblings of her own. This meant plenty of aunts and uncles and cousins were always around. On September 10th, 1999, around 1 p.m., Jessica's mom, Edna, arrived home. Seeing Jessica's car in the driveway struck Edna as strange since Jessica should have still been at school until 2:30 p.m. Edna went inside to check for Jessica but found no sign of her. Concerned, she called her husband, Michael, who was also unaware of why Jessica wouldn't be at school. Growing more worried, she had concern that there might be an issue with Jessica's car. With that thought in mind, she decided to use a spare key from the house to attempt starting the car. However, the moment she approached the vehicle, she was met with a disturbing sight. The driver's door was slightly ajar, catching her attention right away. Secondly, even more alarming, Jessica's cell phone was discovered resting on the seat, displaying the numbers 9 and 1 on the screen. Beneath the front seat, one of Jessica's shoes and her keys were found, while in the back seat, her textbooks, work clothes, and purse were scattered. Edna's concern heightened instantly as it became evident that someone had attempted to dial 911 on Jessica's phone, but had not completed the call. Edna called the school and learned that Jessica never showed up that day. The Deshawn family became very worried and began calling everyone they knew. No one had seen her. Jessica's best friend, Sarah Bailey, age 17, revealed that both of them were supposed to work at Hardee's that night. Sarah expressed deep concern, stating that Jessica wouldn't miss work and wouldn't just leave without informing anyone. The question on everybody's mind was, where's Jessica? And why would she leave her things behind? The situation only grew more distressing. At around 5 p.m. that evening, Edna and Mike called the local police to report that the 17-year-old daughter was missing. Unfortunately, despite their distress, the officers didn't take any immediate action. They dismissed the situation, thinking it was just a case of a teenager running away. The family felt frustrated because they were deeply concerned about their daughter's well-being and were unhappy with the officers' lack of concern. Jessica's parents tried to tell the police that their daughter might be in danger. Unfortunately, even after they begged them, the police refused to start an investigation. This left them with no option but to go back home. So, Edna and Mike were really determined to find their daughter by themselves. They decided to take action on their own. They reached out to relatives, friends, and acquaintances, but no one had seen her. The next morning, Jessica's parents went to the police again and informed them that Jessica still hadn't come home. This time, the police sent 2 officers to check her car. However, her parents encountered another problem. The officers examined Jessica's car without using gloves, and they touched everything inside with their bare hands. Surprisingly, they skipped the standard procedure of checking Jessica's room. Once again, feeling disappointed and let down by law enforcement, Jessica's parents decided to seek assistance from the local media. They aimed to draw attention to their daughter's disappearance and highlight the police's apparent lack of interest in the situation. Jessica's parents, along with relatives and friends, took matters into their own hands. They initiated their independent search efforts, and in addition, they began distributing flyers containing the information about Jessica. The search was led by Jessica's father and his brother Stanley, who was familiar with the area. Fearing the worst, they decided to focus their search near a local river, an area known for its bad reputation due to its popularity among local drug dealers and criminals. For hours, Jessica's relatives dedicated their time to thoroughly searching the challenging terrain near the river. But unfortunately, they found no trace of her. The following morning brought an unusual occurrence. Jessica's parents were at home, and their son was playing in the yard. Suddenly, he hurried inside, claiming he heard a cry for help that sounded like his sister's voice. In response to the alarming situation, Jessica's father swiftly grabbed his shotgun and rushed outside, determined to locate the source of the cry. At the same time, his brother drove up to their house and promptly joined them. As they continued in their search, they began to observe something strange. They noticed a column of smoke coming from their neighbor's property. The property belonged to a 40-year-old man named David Brooks. As they approached, their eyes caught sight of him burning something that strongly looked like clothing on his land. In light of the suspicious scene they witnessed, Jessica's father approached Brooks and requested permission to search his farm. However, Brooks declined and insisted that they leave his property. This refusal added to the suspicion surrounding Brooks. However, shortly after Jessica disappeared, Brooks started acting strange. He began regularly driving slowly past their home, staring at them with a creepy smile. Jessica's parents also got strange phone calls from an unknown man who stayed silent and just breathed heavily. They thought it might be Brooks, but they couldn't figure out why he would behave that way. Jessica's parents talked to the police again because they felt the police weren't very interested in the case. They shared what they had noticed and asked the officers to go to Brooks's place with cadaver dogs. Police agreed, and they used Jessica's clothes to help the dogs track her. The dogs guided them to the fire pit on Brooks's property, but they didn't find any significant evidence there. In one of the sheds, the dogs also found black gloves, indicating a smell linked to decomposition. Despite Brooks acting more suspicious during the search, the police couldn't link him to Jessica's disappearance. Once again, Jessica's father was disappointed, as the police couldn't find any leads. Frustrated, he decided to contact the FBI. Normally, the FBI doesn't start investigations solely based on calls from relatives. But this time, they made an exception. After looking into the disturbing details shared by Jessica's parents, the FBI believed something terrible might have happened to her. From that moment on, a proper investigation began, something the local police had been hesitant to do. FBI agents gathered fingerprints from Jessica's room and car, seizing all potential evidence for analysis. They sent everything to the lab for examination. Additionally, they organized an extensive ground search using helicopters and volunteers. They thoroughly checked the pond near Jessica's home, considering the possibility of finding her body there. FBI agents carefully searched Brooks's farm, where they made an alarming discovery: one of the sheds, a printed photo of Jessica. This unsettling discovery led detectives to believe that Brooks might be involved in her disappearance. They also became suspicious of his 35-year-old brother, Joseph, as he acted strangely during the police search. However, a significant problem was discovered. Despite their efforts, investigators found no substantial evidence to arrest the brothers. Focusing all their efforts on the search in the area, investigators were almost certain that Jessica was no longer alive. On September 27th, the situation remained tense and uncertain. After 17 days of Jessica being missing, the police got a call from a woman. She was driving near the river where Jessica's father and his brother had searched earlier. The woman noticed something strange near a tree by the road, decided to check it out. When she got closer, she realized it looked like a human body. She immediately called the police. FBI agents rushed to the scene and indeed found the lifeless body of a young woman. Unfortunately, she was missing some fingers and limbs. There was a rope tied around her legs with traces of red and silver paint. Parts of her clothing were also missing, leading detectives to suspect she had been sexually abused. Due to the advanced state of decomposition, they couldn't confirm if it was Jessica. An officer went to Jessica's house and asked her parents to help identify her. Jessica's father couldn't bring himself to look, but her mother agreed. She arrived at the scene and, at first, couldn't recognize her. However, she soon noticed a small butterfly tattoo on the body, identical to her daughter's, and located in the same spot. The police thought the body had been recently moved because someone would have noticed it days earlier. They also suspected that the rope had been used to relocate the body. 15 feet away, they discovered hair and body fluids. Her body, brought in for an autopsy, was further confirmed to be hers through dental records. The autopsy revealed that Jessica's cause of death was strangulation. The police suspected she might have been sexually assaulted based on how her clothes were found. However, when Jessica's clothes were tested, forensic analysis couldn't provide conclusive evidence of sexual assault. Experts discovered that her limbs and fingers were removed after she had died, meaning she was still alive for some time. But even more heartbreaking was the fact that Jessica had been alive for about 3 days after she went missing. This meant that the police had a chance to save her during that time, but they didn't take any action. After finding Jessica's body, the FBI decided to question Brooks again. In their first talk, he said he had seen Jessica near her house on the morning she disappeared. However, this time, he changed his story, saying he hadn't seen her at all that day. Now, he claimed to be at home in bed with his wife that morning. When detectives questioned his wife, she contradicted her husband's testimony. The FBI kept questioning Brooks, asking him what he would do if they found his fingerprints on the victim's body. Although no such evidence was found, Brooks's response was very suspicious. He said he would have to confess to everything in that case. Later, he failed a polygraph test, so the FBI decided to arrest him and move forward with the trial. They were aware that the chances of a guilty verdict were relatively low because they hadn't found any solid evidence linking Brooks to the murder. All they had were disturbing but indirect signs of his involvement. The detectives kept working on the case, searching for more evidence as the trial preparations moved forward. During the search of Brooks's car, investigators found a rope similar to the one used on the victim's legs. However, no DNA samples were discovered on it, making it another piece of circumstantial evidence. The trial started in January 2003. Brooks's lawyer insisted on the complete lack of evidence and declared his client's innocence. Another detail that came to light during the trial was that when the body was found, investigators also discovered some missing limbs nearby. They placed them in special containers and gave them to the local police, ignoring labels that said to store them in the refrigerator. Unfortunately, they left the boxes at room temperature, causing extensive decomposition. This mistake meant that any potential evidence, including possible DNA traces from the killer, was lost. All the other circumstantial pieces of evidence against Brooks didn't have enough weight. In the end, the jurors couldn't reach a unanimous decision, so the man walked free. According to state laws, you could only be charged again if new evidence was found. For Jessica's parents, this was devastating. They had almost no doubt that Brooks was behind their daughter's murder. However, if the police had taken their job more seriously, their daughter might have been saved. So in the end, they lost all hope of achieving justice. In the following years, this case remained unsolved and was eventually almost entirely forgotten. In 2012, a new detective named Lynn Hunt joined the local police department. She was assigned to investigate unsolved cases, and her initial focus was on Jessica's murder. When she reviewed the case files, she was shocked by the negligence of her predecessors. Most of the documents were filled with errors and missing references to conversations with the involved parties. The evidence wasn't properly documented. In other words, it was so poorly handled that she had to essentially start the investigation from scratch, 13 years after the murder. Her first step was to talk to Jessica's family. One of her brothers, now an adult living separately from his parents, handed her a box of Jessica's belongings from her car. He had kept it since the police returned these items to the family. Once again, Hunt was astonished at how carelessly her colleagues had handled the evidence, failing to store it properly according to protocol. Now, after so many years, these items were unlikely to help her, but she diligently continued to examine everything she could find. Soon she discovered an interesting detail among the documents. Brooks's medical examination report stated that his IQ was only 61, which is quite low. This raised concerns about all police actions, including Brooks's interrogations. Given his significantly low IQ, he might not have fully understood most of the questions and could have given less than adequate answers. All this led Hunt to consider that the man might have no connection to the case at all, as his strange behavior could easily be explained by his extremely low IQ. Then Hunt began to think about who else could have committed this murder. She extensively researched everyone involved in the case or living nearby. This continued until September 2014. Nearly 15 years after Jessica's death, Detective Lynn Hunt received intriguing information from a colleague in another department. An inmate from a Kentucky state prison claimed to know the real identity of Jessica DeShawn's murderer. Hunt approached this lead with a slight skepticism, knowing that inmates sometimes share information to secure benefits. However, she understood the importance of verifying the lead. She visited the prison and met with the inmate who claimed to have information. According to him, he shared a cell with an inmate convicted of child abuse on the same charge as his. The two became friends, and one day the inmate confessed to murdering Jessica DeShawn. The shocking revelation named Jessica's uncle, Stanley DeShawn, her father's brother, as the murderer. He claimed Stanley had sexually abused Jessica for years, and on the morning of September 10, Stanley confronted her, leading to her tragic death. Hunt verified the information, discovering a buried bedsheet near an abandoned barn. This crucial evidence led to Stanley's arrest. Despite the shocking revelations, Stanley refused to confess to the crime. Trial proceeded. Jessica's parents struggled to accept that Stanley, their relative, committed such a horrifying act. As the trial continued, Hunt investigated Stanley's past, discovering a pattern of sexual abuse against other women in the family. However, securing a murder conviction was challenging due to the lack of direct evidence like fingerprints or DNA. The case took an unexpected turn to events when Hunt found a neglected letter dated June 26, 2002, where another informant had shared the same story about Stanley's involvement in Jessica's murder. This crucial information, ignored by previous investigators, raised questions about their professionalism. Stanley eventually pleaded guilty to a plea deal, receiving a 20-year prison sentence with parole eligibility after 15 years. Jessica's parents, though desiring the full truth, had to accept the plea deal terms. Stanley's first interview in 2019 maintained his innocence, further complicating the case. David Brooks, initially implicated, passed away in 2021 due to heart problems, leaving some aspects of the case unsolved. The truth about what happened on the day of Jessica's disappearance remains unclear, with various theories and uncertainties surrounding the case. As we close the chapter on this terrifying story, it stands as a stark reminder of how trust can be fragile. Darkness can hide in unexpected places. This heartbreaking story of Jessica DeShawn serves as a horrifying example of the prevalence of crimes against children and the importance of creating a safe environment for individuals to speak out about abuse. It's a strong call to stay watchful and build community where looking out for one another is the norm, not the exception. If you found this video informative, please consider liking the video, subscribing to our channel, and turning on the notification bell to stay updated on our latest true crime content. Your support helps us continue to shed light on these important stories. Remember to join the discussion in the comments below and share your thoughts. Until next time, make sure you stay safe and take care of yourself and your family.